Welcome back to Law and Crime Live. My name is Stephanie L. Willis, and I will be with you for the remainder of the afternoon. And things are pretty tense here over at the Law and Crime Network because we are on verdict watch in the Tex McIver case, and we've been on verdict watch for quite a while. And so we're going to get into everything pretty quickly. I know that you've been watching some recaps from opening statements as well as closing arguments. We have Brian Wagner with us this afternoon, so he'll be instrumental in breaking down some of these cases that we're covering today. But I do want to take you live to the courthouse in the Tex McIver case because we have Latonia Hines with us. Latonia has been covering the trial live over at the courthouse, and so we want to be able to talk to her a little bit just to see what it's like over there. We know that the jury has been deliberating for quite some time. Latonia, are you there? You know what?
Hi.
Oh, there you are. There you are. I got a little worried a little bit because I remember you did say that if for some reason we did hear there was a verdict that you would have to go. So I kind of got on edge a little bit. I just want to make sure that you're still with us and that you can hear us.
Yes, and I can hear you.
Great. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. I know that you've been there live in the court at the courthouse pretty much all day. What has it been like over in the courthouse this afternoon?
So, you know, for the most part, you've seen everybody walking around. Heck, you've even seen Tex walking around, and it's a little bit relaxed, probably a little bit more relaxed than you would normally see because you have witnesses who've testified who are still coming into the jury room, into the courtroom. After lunch, though, the jury asked to work during their lunch hour, and so it made everybody kind of think that maybe we'd be getting a verdict back relatively soon. So then you started seeing people filling into the courtroom. We had a little bit of an alert thinking that the light had gone off for the jury saying that they had a verdict, but it was more that they needed a break. So we have more people who are into the courtroom right now, especially because we know that the jury asked us to stop today at 4 o'clock, and we're getting closer and closer to that 4 o'clock hour.
We are.
So it's
absolutely,
so
we are. It is currently 3 o'clock where we are, and I know it's 3 o'clock over where you are as well. And we have to let our viewers know that Latonia is speaking a little lower just because she is at the courthouse right now, so we don't want there to be any kind of a disturbance. So that is the reason why that she is speaking a little lower than normal.
Yes.
But we do appreciate.
Sorry.
No, that's perfectly okay. We do appreciate everything that she's been able to tell us thus far. And, you know, Brian, I want to bring you in a little bit on this too. Latonia, you said that the members of the jury did say that they wanted to be done by 4 o'clock. That there was going to be that there wasn't, I guess, an inadvertent break. Maybe, what do you guys both think? Do you think maybe things may have gotten a little tense in the jury deliberation room, and maybe that's why they wanted a break? Because as you did say, Latonia, they did want to work through lunch. So I'm gonna talk to you first, Latonia, and then I'll bring it to Brian.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely what happened. They just needed some time. They've been here since like 9 o'clock in the morning, and I think they just needed some time and needed a break. Things might have gotten just a little bit tense, and so they just need to be able to have a break.
Absolutely. What do you think, Brian?
I completely agree with Ms. Hines. I mean, this is a murder case. The jury wants to take this case seriously, and they want to give it the serious deliberation that it deserves. And that's obviously what they're doing by taking every moment they can. And although they have to leave at 4 o'clock today,
right,
they could always come back on Monday. So I don't think they're under any rush necessarily to make a decision as opposed to the right decision.
Absolutely. I have to agree with you. And we do know jury members do take their jobs very seriously. We know that this is a service that they are providing to our community, and we know that it's their duty, I should say. And what about, Latonia, what about members of the family? I mean, you did say that you particularly saw Tex McIver walking around. What was his demeanor? I know we'd like to hear about that.
He just seemed very calm. I mean, it's one of the rare things you don't usually see a murder defendant being able to be out and about because usually they're in custody, but he seemed fine. He was very nice, actually cordial, and greeted people as he's walking out of the courtroom. His assistant is here. Annie, the masseuse, is here. Danny Joe is here. So there's quite a few people who are here.
You said that there are Danny Joe McIver. Danny Jo Carter is also there.
Yes, she is.
Wow.
She is here. she is here, and she's seated definitely on one side of the area, kind of closer to the prosecution, and then the Miss Anderson, the masseuse, is seated further towards the defense side and has interacted with some of the people from the defense.
Amazing. And while you have been there, have you had the opportunity to speak with anybody at all that has been involved in the case at all?
I mean, I actually got a chance to say good morning to Tex McIver. When he was walking out, he said good morning. So,
wow.
So it was kind of surreal. But you know, we haven't really interacted with too many of the main people who've been here, like Danny Joe, although trying to be respectful. Some of the people have seemed to be quite emotional. I think Annie Anderson's been very kind of emotional while she's been here. A lot of people have been giving her hugs and support. So that's been very interesting.
Brian, let me bring this back to you. I mean, it's kind of, we don't usually see this as normally day to day when we're trying cases that a defendant is just walking around freely and being able to say good morning. What do you take of that?
So one of the things that I would actually want to know is, how is this courthouse set up? Right. Do the jurors enter the same way as the client and the defendants?
Very true.
Because Ms. Hines is right. It is so rare that you have a homicide defendant or client not incarcerated.
Right.
And so the Department of Corrections, or whatever the local bureau is, always goes through pains to make sure that the jurors don't know that he or she is incarcerated. But in this case, you can't help but notice that he isn't. And so how does that even subconsciously play into the jurors' deliberations? I don't know.
Right. And, you know, I would hope that there is or that there are separate entrances for members of the jury. So would you be able to answer that for us, Latonia?
Yeah,
because I know that you're actually there. Go ahead.
Yeah, there are. They go out a totally separate way, and the defense counsel has their own like little what we would call a war room, so they can easily get in and out, and so they're totally separated.
Okay. Wow. This is, as we said, we are still on verdict watch in the Tex McIver case. As we know, we've been on verdict watch for quite some time. The members of the jury have been taking their duty quite seriously. They've been deliberating for quite some time now. As of yesterday, there was approximately 15 and a half hours, so we know that it's a lot more today. The members of the jury have been taking this very seriously. They asked to look at the SUV. They asked to spend some time with the gun. Several members of the jury took turns sitting in the back seat, actually holding the gun. And they actually started the day by rewatching Texas police interview. So, you know, we're continuing. Deliberations started again this morning at 9 a.m. And as Ms. Hines stated, they want to be able to stop by 4 p.m. today if there is no verdict. So we are still hoping, in anticipation that they hopefully do come to a resolution, that there is a verdict today, and what the verdict will be, we don't know. Latonia, you've been live at the courthouse. From what I guess I hate asking, but I have to. What do you think, from you being able to see the members of the jury live in front of you? What do you think what do you predict their verdict will be?
It's very hard, especially as more time goes by. I think when we got those questions the other day, it was very much, it seemed like a defense case until such time as they wanted to see the video again and go down into the car. So then it seemed to me that maybe they're reconsidering, or they really are still considering some of these murder charges. Right now, it's very hard to say. It's hard to say because we were all predicting that we would have a verdict based off of the questions that they had the other day. And it is now 3:07, and we haven't heard anything.
Right. Brian, what do you take of this? I know that originally a lot of us here at the Law&Crime Networks were saying it seemed like a slam dunk case. But as Ms. Hines stated, when you have members of the jury asking for certain things, or asking to see the police interview tapes again, asking to hold the gun, asking to sit in the back seat of the SUV again, what does that make you think of as a defense attorney? Are you shaking in your boots a little bit?
You know, I'm not.
Okay.
And what I like to do with jury notes, and when they're making these requests, is think about, how does that align with my summation? Because that's what a summation is. It's, here's my train of thought, and this is why I think you have to come to my conclusion. And so if they're following the instructions that either the prosecutor or the defense has told them, you have to be pretty confident because you're saying, hey, they're following my line of thought. And so if I'm reasonable and logical, they're going to come to my conclusion. What I would always want to take note of is things that we don't get to see because we're not allowed to show the juries. How are they reacting to one another when they are in court, when they are hearing notes or examining evidence? Are they all staring at juror number 7 saying, you know, here it is?
Right.
Or are they all kind of looking amongst each other confused? Because that gives you a good indication of how they're lined up right now.
Well, I think that's a good question to follow up with to Ms. Hines. Have you ever, in seeing the members of the jury coming back or asking questions or even, you know, asking for certain things, have you ever seen them kind of look at a certain member of a jury or members of the jury kind of like, well, this is, you know, has your question been answered or something of the sort?
No, not necessarily,
Okay.
but we do have a juror that people have made note of a lot, either because they were late or things about this juror number 61. So that'll be an interesting person to you've ever talked to after this trial, because it seems everybody knows who juror 61 is.
Yeah.
And she also, it's my understanding from what one of the other reporters told me, took quite a bit of time walking around the car yesterday and was one of the last people to actually do so of the jury. So that would be interesting. But otherwise, they seem very collegiate, and the judge allows them to move around, so they're not always seated in the same place.
Ah, well, that's good. I mean, that makes things a little bit easier. Is there anything else that you know, you want to let our viewers know that we haven't since covered?
It is just a surreal, the thing that all of us who comment on trials, it's just a very surreal trial. It is very rare that you have witnesses who have testified who stay every day to watch the trial. And so you have them walking around, and then you have the defendant walking around. It's just it's been a very surreal situation.
So we can say that we have a lot of people who are invested in seeing the outcome ultimately of this trial, whichever way I guess that it goes. There are people that are invested to see what happens.
Yes, without a doubt. And the other thing too is usually you can tell definitely which side a witness is on, and some of the witnesses you can't tell. You can't tell whether or not they truly.
You brought up a great point, because you did say that Danny Joe Carter was sitting on the side of the prosecution. So, you know, with that, then, you know, maybe one would think, okay, maybe she's erring on the side of the prosecution. But in terms of witnesses, why don't you explain that for us a little bit? I think that's
because
an
of the
interesting
way
point.
that the jury, the way that the courtroom is laid out, it's like a triangle. Okay. You've got a left, a center, and then a right. The center can sort of be towards prosecution and defense. And so when those people sit into that pew, you can't really say that they're truly one way or the other. Some people sit closer to the left side, inside of that center, which is closer to the prosecution. It makes you think of the prosecution side.
Ah, okay, I see. So I think that you provided us a great explanation as to how the layout of the courtroom actually is, so that for those of us who can't see, we don't, you know, from what we see on TV, we don't really necessarily have a kind of layout. We're just, I guess, making it up in our minds as to see how the courtroom actually is. But Ms. Hines did provide us with, you know, just a great concept visually of how the courtroom is actually laid out. And I think that that's a great point. Have you ever experienced that during your time practicing, Brian?
I haven't. What I've typically experienced is there's two sides. There's the prosecution side and the defense side.
Right.
Or in federal court in New York, in the Eastern and Southern District, the two sides sit one directly behind the other. So I haven't had to experience this sort of triangle effect that Ms. Hines described, but also a lot of this is reading tea leaves.
Right.
We have no idea what the jurors are or not thinking. The only thing we could do is kind of rely on our practice and our experiences. And what it seems like is all of our experiences say, this is a weird situation.
Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down to.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Latonia, I want to thank you so much for being with us. I know that you want to make sure that you're ever present there in the courthouse, so that if we do get a verdict, we'll be able to announce it to our viewers very, very quickly. So I really want to thank you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And we look forward, hopefully, to seeing you again before the 4 o'clock hour, letting us know that there has been a verdict in this case. And so we hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, guys.
Have a great one. And so, Brian, let's talk about this a little bit. This is a weird case, right? All the way from opening statements throughout closing arguments, we thought that in the beginning that the prosecution had pretty much or that they said that they pretty much had a great case, but it's not really what we've seen thus far, right?
No. And the seminal moment is when the prosecution's expert is on the stand demonstrating the gun, and he goes, oops, that he just accidentally fired it.
Right.
I mean, if that is akin to the trying on the glove moment in OJ.
Yes, exactly.
It's like, what are you doing?
Exactly.
And if that moment alone, the jury can say, you know what, they just didn't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. They're not saying Tex is innocent.
Right.
But they are saying, you didn't really prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. Maybe the jury's thinking about that, maybe they're not. But if I'm in that back room, or if I'm the one giving the summation, I am hammering that point home every single time I can.
I think that's true. And our host, Aaron Keller, on the Law&Crime Network, he actually provided a great article about that. And one of the things that he did mention specifically was the fact that the gun accidentally went off in the courtroom. Now, thank goodness it wasn't loaded, but that's something, if it can accidentally go off with an expert, imagine someone who's sleeping and how it can accidentally go off in the back of a car. So, I mean, if that didn't help out the defense in this case, I don't know what did. And, the prosecution, I don't know what they would have done, or what they did do, or how they could have come back from that. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue with some coverage from the Tex McIver case. We're going to continue forward with defense closing, just so that we can actually recap. And once the verdict, hopefully, I'm going to say that it's going to come down today, even though we don't know. But hopefully the verdict will come down, and maybe we'll be able to see which vantage point the members of the jury are coming from. So we're going to take you to that clip right now. Stay tuned.